This is Chicago Rat Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
Over 5 years, 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you live from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, broadcasting via the auditory and visual mediums to my fellow delinquents across the globe. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is November the 14th, 2024, and this is episode 475 of Workshop Radio. Great to be back. It is Thursday, which means it is time for not just Workshop Radio, but This Week in Prepping. See a few delinquents in the, I was going to call it the gully, but it's pretty close. Over in the comments this evening, let's shout out to Ian, Martinson family, Digger, Pippin. Great to have you. And before we go any further, time for a sip of an old fashioned. Oh, that is good, guys. So I mentioned this a little while ago. If you guys know Worm, he was on one of the Halloween episodes. He made me an Italian liqueur called Nocino. Not just for me. He makes it himself, but blessed me with a bottle of it. And I decided tonight to finally use it as the bitters in my old fashioned. And oh my goodness, is it ever good. Hardway, Alaska, Jeff Stark. Good to see you in here. All right. So first off, we are going to start with a rule to live by. Rule number 34. You don't know what you don't know. I think that's a simpler way to talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect. If you've heard about that, anyway, it's basically the idea is if you know just a little bit about something, you're dangerous because you think you've mastered it all. I'll give you a good example of this. Of course, you guys hear me talk about taking Charlotte to volleyball all the time. And this is her third year into it. And I would say my first year into it, I was like, man, I got this figured out. This is cool. I'm a volleyball dad. I know the rules. I know, what happens when they blow the whistle. I know all this stuff. Well, by my second year, I realized I didn't know what I didn't know. There was so much to the game that I just didn't understand it. I didn't know about the rotations. I didn't know about the specialty kind of positions that the older kids play eventually. There was just so much, and I just continue to learn new rules. But the thing is, you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of times you can get ignorant of something simply because you think you're an expert all of a sudden. So for me, one of the biggest things that I have tried to do, and I'm not perfect at this, folks, but it is to admit that I don't know something, or to go out and maybe look around and see, is there something that I'm missing about this? Because when I get full of myself, that's when I fail. That's when I make my mistakes, and that's when I end up looking like an ass. When we assume, same type of thing, right? So there you go. Rule number 34. You don't know what you don't know. But anyhow, it is great to be back this week. It has been a busy as all get out week, and we are going to dive right into the first segment tonight.
If anyone dies while you are kept in your fallout room, move the body to another room in the house.
The time has come for Stranger Than Fiction. Here we are, guys. And real quick, you're going to notice, I live by the 1% better every day mantra. I do my best. And so I like to go back and watch my live streams or listen to the podcast if I'm driving. And I always try to find some way to improve it. And of course, I've been kind of not ticked at myself, but I haven't really enjoyed the fact that I'm missing out on some transitions. So I did finish up some new transitions, some new stinger clips. So you're going to get the rough cut of those this week. I just sent them off to Red Flyer Media, my IT lady, who, well, we know Rebecca. She's absolutely incredible, to get them spruced up at her whim. She gets to take her time. There's no rush there at all, but I had to get them out there for you so we'd have some new ones. So as we go through, you'll get to see some new transitions. First story of the week, guys. I was sitting at a chicken joint yesterday with my son-in-law, and I'd almost forgotten about the mess that Haiti was in. And of course, maybe I wouldn't know about it if it wasn't for the news. But if you guys heard about that gang kingpin, he is a former police officer goes by the name of Barbecue. I don't know. There was some, eating people type thing, rumors and whatever. The guy just tries to intimidate folks through and through. But anyhow, there was an airplane flying in just the other day, and it got shot at. So let's take a look at this story. This comes from ctvnews.ca. And if you're not familiar with the .ca prefix or whatever suffix, that's for Canadian websites. I know. It's just kind of the news that I get fed most of the time. I have to go searching for some of the non-Canadian sources here and there. But all right, flight from Florida to Haiti diverted after gunfire hits plane over Port-au-Prince. Yeah, I think that'd be my last trip across there for a little while. Haiti swore in a new prime minister on Monday after a Spirit Airlines plane was hit by gunfire over the country's capital, Port-au-Prince. The incident resulted in what the airline described as minor injuries to one of its crew members. So I don't know. I'm guessing there was no bullet shrapnel. I'm guessing there was probably maybe some panic and they shifted quick and maybe she fell. Not really sure. But they were only at around 500 feet when it happened. So everybody should have been tied in, ready for landing. Spirit said Monday that its flight from Fort Lauderdale to Port-au-Prince was diverted and landed in Santiago, Dominican Republic, where an inspection revealed evidence of damage to the aircraft consistent with gunfire. Whew. Well, first prepper tip out of that, I would say, is probably not a great idea to schedule a flight somewhere into a hotbed of terrorist activity, somewhere like a war zone per se. I don't necessarily want to say it's a war zone, but it's as damn close to a war zone as it can get. There was somewhere in the multiple of thousands of prisoners who perpetrated a prisoner break out of prison recently. So you can just imagine the absolute disaster that area is right at the moment. The airline said one of its flight attendants reported minor injuries and was being evaluated. Data reviewed by CNN from Flight Radar showed the plane descended to around 550 feet over Port-au-Prince's neighborhood just east of the airport before pulling up quickly and bypassing the runway. So just going to say, I mean, this kind of shit could happen in, say, like Detroit or Baltimore. It sounds like they come in low over a residential area that's probably not the safest area in the world. And it could have just as easily been some idiot, out with a handgun or something firing off at the plane. I mean, you got to do pretty good to hit a plane coming in like that. But anyhow, it might have just been an accident. I'm guessing it was probably malicious, though. The Haitian-based commercial airline Sunrise Airways told CNN it had suspended flights until further notice. U.S.-based carriers JetBlue and American Airlines have also canceled flights to and from Haiti until Thursday. So for any of you out there who is planning a trip to Haiti tonight, you might not want to do it. Sounds like it could be rather dangerous. But again, we've heard that old saying, don't go to stupid places with stupid people, do stupid things at stupid times. Well, really, this is just one of those. Don't go there if you don't have to. Now, I mean, most folks, unless you're a missionary, probably wasn't going to Haiti anyway. But what some folks don't know is the Dominican Republic's on the other half of that island. And a lot of folks go to the Dominican Republic for all-inclusive, all you can eat, all you can drink vacations. So it might be time to rethink some of that. I'm not saying anybody in here is going to be doing that, but again, just something to think about. Let's take a look at the delinquents' comments here so far. And Lone Canadian says, must not have been an American flight. They tend to shoot back. I believe they have, cockpit-mounted guns on the front. I'm pretty sure, back to like Second World War, that kind of thing. And Pippin says, Inspector, is that a 7.62? All right, next story we got this week. This is a cool one. I have a search term notification, kind of automatic to notify me. One for off-grid living, one for prepping, prepper, a lot of those things. So it helps me read the stories I'm interested in and then share them with you guys. And this one came up this week, and I thought, well, we always say, get out of the city, get out of the city, get out of the city. Well, some folks don't want to get out of the city. Some folks want to live in the city because their family's there. Some people want to live in California because their grandkids are there. Some people want to live in Canada because their businesses are here. I know, it's the weirdest thing, right? Anyhow, check out this dude. This comes from Newser.com, and he's living off the grid in Manhattan. And not because he couldn't afford to pay his rent or not because he couldn't afford to pay his utilities. This dude chose to shut his power off. So this guy named Josh Spodek has been testing the limits of capacity to tread lightly on the planet since 2015. That's a mouthful. When he decided to stop purchasing food wrapped in any kind of packaging. Well, okay, that would be a little more difficult if you lived in a small town. You know, I'm not saying that it would be impossible, but it would be more of a challenge, that's for sure. I know if I could go get produce at my local grocery store, that's for sure. And I guess if I talked to the local butcher shop, they would let me bring in containers and they would put the meat in it, maybe. I don't know. But as far, you'd have to work, you know, to find milk. You'd probably have to go to, you know, I don't even know of a dairy farmer around here that sells raw milk. But anyhow, enough of that. So, and in 2022, he disconnected the circuit breaker into his studio apartment, which he probably still pays $4,000 a month for. Anyway, with just 4 solar panels and a 17-pound battery that he lugs up to his roof every single day. Says he can get just enough juice to power his cell phone, his laptop, and his Instapot in about 4 hours. I was actually pretty impressed with that Instapot thing. That is not a device that I think of for off-grid. And I guess in my head, I don't know how this ever happened, but air fryers and Instapots, I know they're not the same thing. But it was like when I was a little kid and I used to think all cats are girls and all dogs are boys. So anyway, I know air fryers use a lot more power than the little pressure cookers. But either way, he says he can get, with 4 hours of charge, he can run his Instapot, his cell phone, and his laptop, depending on the sunshine, of course. While step 1 of going off the grid seems like it would involve moving into the wilderness, he says he doesn't have any plans to leave the city. People forever, here's kind of his little mantra here. And I thought he ended up writing a book, so I guess there's that too. But people forever have moved to live off in nature, he tells New Yorker. They get this lovely little place, and then someone else moves there, and then someone else moves there, and then boom, there's a new city. Well, I mean, that's a very simplistic view of things, because I'm going to tell you, I don't believe we're going to have a city down in Decatur County, where Delinquent's Gully happens to be, anytime soon. Says that Spodek has about the same carbon footprint as 3 house cats. Would that be like the carbon footprint of the house cat from Lampoon's Christmas Vacation that it left in the carpet, or a live cat? I'm not really sure. To achieve this, he avoids both direct and indirect energy usage, along with not using wall outlets or gas hookups to his apartment. He eschews riding elevators. Stayed at a hotel, got up yesterday morning on the 4th floor, and the elevator was broke down. So, you know, not that I'm in great shape, but I'm not in horrible shape. But stay in shape, folks, because you never know when your elevator is going to break. That's the second time that's happened to me since this summer. Along with not using wall outlets, gas, he eschews riding elevators, taxis, or airplanes. There's a running tab on his website about his break from air travel, 100 months and counting. I'm going to guess there's a lot of folks in here that could say that they're, they've inadvertently avoided air travel for many, many months, probably a lot longer than 100. But yeah, this dude's pretty proud of that. He also has a zero waste approach to his consumer and kitchen habits. He began throwing away about a bag of garbage a year, and now he says he's whittled it down even further. He showcased a year's worth of trash, which fits into a small reusable canvas bag. Hey, to each their own. I love things like this. I love listening to other people's ideas of freedom. I mean, my idea of freedom is certainly not a studio apartment in New York City living with almost no power and spending all day shopping so that I don't increase my carbon footprint. Not at all. However, if that's what he wants to do, great. Yeah, Pippin says, yeah, I'll drive, no need for flight. Absolutely. And Ian says, I know there's a community, or used to be, that lives in the defunct subway sections underneath Manhattan. I've always been really, really interested in that kind of stuff. There's a really good documentary that I watched a few years ago where they go down in the drainage tunnels in Las Vegas and talk to the people who live down there. Absolutely interesting. Yeah, Lone Canadian says, how does he heat his place, and what about water and sewer? I didn't see anything in this article about heat, water, or sewer. And it says he doesn't take half measures, switching to candlelight and turning off his phone during periods of less sunlight. I made some big advances, extreme commitment to clients he coaches. Somebody says, I think he's unreasonable, but he's extreme, he's dramatic, but I think people really make a difference in the world. Yeah, it doesn't say anything else about that. So maybe we'll have to do a little bit of digging and see. I mean, if he is flexing all about his carbon footprint, then I would think he's probably being rather careful about how he heats. And again, here's the deal. If he's living on, say, like the 12th floor of an apartment building or something, which might be crazy, you're going to get a lot of heat coming up from people below. So you're kind of stealing off of their heat. I'm not saying that's what he's doing. Now, as far as sewer, that's a really good question. Not sure. Might be interesting to find out what the answer to that question is. Ian says, I think there's a documentary on YouTube or Netflix on the Manhattan subways as well. I tried to get Bradley Garrett on here a while back, and I had him agreed to coming on the show, and then he had some family sickness that he couldn't make it. But he's the dude who wrote the book Bunker, and he also, when he was on Joe Rogan a while back, and what a great dude. He spent a ton of time exploring the underground tube, well, basically the leftover things that have been shut down and built on top in London. And he got further below ground than anybody else ever had. Almost, well, I think he actually did get arrested. It could have been really, really bad. But either way, he'd be a really interesting guy to get on the show. And I'm going to reach out to him again. I'm still working on it. I've got a couple of guests in the mix at some point that I really want to bring on here. Some of these big name guests will probably be pre-records just to eliminate one more moving part. But either way, still working on some good guests for you guys. All right, what do we got next? Let's see here. This comes from Forbes.com. Everybody knows Forbes. New Chrome, Safari, Firefox warning. Do not Google these words. It's actually a two-part article. We're going to skip the first part because it's about super technical kind of stuff about these guys who are spoofing very specific search terms to download zip files into your computer. Either way, not very interesting. But the one that caught my attention was right here. And this was, I mean, what a clickbait title this article had. And I decided to use it for tonight's episode as well. But it was, do not Google these words. Here we go. It says, be careful what you Google. This story is a little bit different. Just a few days before the Sophos report was published, a story appeared in several media outlets warning that a woman had revealed the 4 words you should avoid Googling to ensure the police do not pay an unexpected visit to your home. So let's back up a little bit. This was just after the Boston Marathon bombing. So she's doing some shopping. We'll get into it here, but we're browsing. This couple said, we were browsing for everyday household items when they inadvertently entered just the right combination to trigger a terrorism profiling flag, prompting law enforcement to pay them a visit. So before we go any further, what this article assumes or implies is that whatever you type into Google, and I mean, we should know this without, too much inclination here, whatever you type into Google is being tracked. And if certain words show up, you're getting a visit at the door. So here we are. So if you don't want police to show up at your door, do not search for the 4 words. Pressure cooker, B-O-M-B, along with the word backpack. Yeah. So can you imagine? There you go. Those are the 4 words. And she goes into it a little bit more, just so you know why she was searching for those things. The story was a little stretched, given that it wasn't a direct flag from an all-seeing computer system in DC analyzing Google searches. It was, in fact, okay, so I'm going to back up on this one a little bit. It was, in fact, the IT department at her husband's employer who flagged the search and reported it to local police. So I read this article once already, came back to it, but forgot about this little caveat. It was not technically the government tracking her. It was her husband's employer. Now, here's the deal. There should be there should be no way that you should think you get any privacy when you're on a work laptop. Now, I don't think they were worried about that. I think they were just doing something innocuous and the combination flagged and they sent it in. But again, your employer's going to sell you up the creek without ever, it would have been interesting to just like, hey, saw this, what's up, yo, that kind of thing. But here we are. So this was back in 2013, the Boston Marathon fresh in people's minds. Following the couple's unintentional internet search, several black SUVs pulled up at the couple's house to ensure they were not a terrorist threat. While the story had captured the imagination, it's not the searches that will catch you, but the content returned by those searches. Accessing websites and links flagged as dangerous is more likely to see your browser behavior traced back to you than a search itself. That said, if you fall foul of law enforcement, then a review of search history on your devices or link to your accounts is almost certain. So at least do incognito mode, which really isn't that good. We've proven that. But, you know, if you're into Tor and the Onion, you know, the Onion browser, that kind of stuff. But either way, remember, if you work for somebody, everything you do on company products, on company time, I mean, no reasonable assumption of privacy there whatsoever. So these guys got caught. Just remember it. There's always something that could happen. Simple as that. I mean, most people should take a minute and figure out that their boss would probably be spying on them if they could get away with it. But either way, food for thought, folks.
Stay safe, sane, and sanitized.
Let's go back in time with the Prepper Files. Here we are, guys. This is the Prepper Files. That was one of our brand new Stinger clips. It's going to be spruced up with a new filter and some sound effects and that sort of thing. But in case you're wondering, that clip comes from a very not well-known movie called Songbird from 4 years ago. It was a Netflix, very short in the future, dystopian outbreak movie starring Alexandria Daddario. And I didn't love the movie, but that clip stuck out with me for a long time, and I always wanted to use it. So here we are. All right, the Prepper Files. And that is on this date. What happened on this date that could have prepper consequences, or could be something you could learn from, or even just something kind of interesting. So the first one was the 2001 Kunlun earthquake. This was an earthquake in China on November 14th, 2001. At 9:26 in the morning, with an epicenter near Coxville. Looks like Knoxville, but not quite, missing a couple letters. Close to the border between a couple of different provinces. Anyway, the big thing here was that it was in a remote mountainous region. It had a magnitude of 7.8. It was the most powerful earthquake in China for over 50 years. No casualties reported, which was good, presumably due to both the very low population density and the lack of high-rise buildings. Both of things can cause some problems with earthquakes. Now, this earthquake was associated with the longest surface rupture ever recorded on land. So basically a crack from an earthquake going 450 kilometers, or roughly 300 freedom units. Rather interesting. I'd never heard of this earthquake, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere near a 7.8 magnitude earthquake with a 450 kilometer fissure in the ground. Not going to happen. But either way, there you go. Now, the next one was something that came up to me. I think this would be more of just wanting to know what's going on in your neighborhood. I've never heard of this before. If anybody else out there has, throw it in the comments, but I thought it was kind of cool. And it was called the Appalachian Meeting. The Appalachian Meeting was a historic summit of the American Mafia held at the home of mobster Joseph Joe the Barber Barbara. This was in Appalachian, New York on November 14th, 1957. Allegedly, the meeting was held to discuss various topics, including loan sharking, narcotics trafficking, and gambling, along with dividing the illegal operations controlled by the recently murdered Albert and Anastasia. An estimated 100 mafioso from the United States, Italy, and Cuba were thought to have attended this meeting. Number one, how did folks from Italy and Cuba, who are known gangsters, get in the country? I mean, I'm sure they have their ways, but again, think outside the box. Here it is, though. Local, state, and law enforcement became suspicious when numerous expensive cars bearing license plates from around the country arrived in what was described as the sleepy hamlet of Appalachian. After setting up roadblocks, the police raided the meeting, causing many of the participants to flee in the woods and area surrounding the Barbara estate. I mean, number one, if you're into something shady like that, you would think that you would maybe make sure you're not attracting attention. And number two, it sounds like the police just sort of fumbled into this. They had no advance warning to it. And the guys ended up going into the woods. They ended up catching over 60 of the underworld bosses, according to Wikipedia. So again, might just be, I guess that's one of those things where you might want to know who your neighbors are. Plain and simple. But yeah, other than that, there wasn't a whole lot in this week on the Prepper Files, that's for sure.
He's dead. They're all dead. Everyone. You and I are in a dead world. And I'm glad it's dead. Cheap, honky-tonk of a world.
Coming up next is Workshop Wasteland. Here we are, folks, Workshop Wasteland. This is where we take a look at all things post-apocalyptic and dystopian fiction in nature, books, movies, video games, anything and everything. Here we are. So first off, I just wanted to shout out to Kate. It says, just got here. What words don't we Google? Not very far behind, but I'll read them. It was pressure cooker, BOMB, backpack. Those were your 4 words. There you go. And Pippin says, is this like the earthquake that swallowed a bunch of Corvettes? I think it might have been. And Ian says, Kate, you have to rewind. We can't type it out or else. Very true. That's why I spelled one of the words. Rewind. What a great word. I was thinking the other day, you know how we have these hand motions for certain things? You know, if you pull up to somebody and they have something wrong with their vehicle and you want them to roll down your window, what do? Everybody knows. You go like this, you know, crank your hand and make it look like you're rolling down the window. And, you know, if you say, you know, call me or hang up the phone, well, nobody actually hangs up the phone anymore. You just press a button. Nobody actually, well, maybe a couple people do, but almost nobody actually rolls a window down. I don't think my kids have ever seen a vehicle with a manual winder for a window. And yet they still say, roll down your windows as well. And Ian says, please be kind, rewind. Absolutely. Here we are. Okay. So there has been an absolute plethora of post-apocalyptic announcements recently. So I stuck with, I'm only going to share 2 with you this week because there's been so much, but these are the 2 I'm the most excited about, and for good reason. All right. Ridley Scott, the director, and Paul Mescal reunite for post-apocalyptic thriller, The Dog Stars. Now, if you guys haven't read The Dog Stars, or Dog Stars, whatever you want to call it, it's worth a read. It's worth a listen. I listened to it last year sometime, and it's about, you know, a guy in his 40s and a guy probably in his 60s. The guy in his 60s is kind of a survivalist prepper. Maybe he's a little younger, but I pictured him in his early 60s. And the guy in his 40s is more like a granola crunching, not a hippie, but, you know, a bit on the left wing side and, you know, anti-confrontational. I wouldn't say he was anti-gun, but he was just that kind of thing. They ended up coming together in a cabin in the woods or off in the country after an environmental apocalypse happened. Almost the entire world has died, and these 2 kind of have to survive together. And the younger guy, the guy in his 40s, he has a plane license, and they have a plane, and he takes these trips where he goes out and explores the area. I love the book. It's, you know, anyway, I don't want to get any further into it, but if you want to give it a listen, give it a listen. But I was pretty excited about this exact thing. So following their collaboration on Gladiator 2, Ridley Scott and Paul Mescal are set to reunite again, this time for post-apocalyptic thriller titled The Dog Stars. Ridley Scott will direct the film for 20th Century Studios, with Mescal in advanced negotiation to star. The film, based on Peter Heller's 2012 novel, is adapted by screenwriter Mark L. Smith, known for his work on The Revenant. I really like The Revenant. You know, even if it starred Leonardo DiCaprio, it was a well-filmed, well-shot movie that really illustrated or showed off some of the, you know, the wasteland that is Alberta, that's for sure. The project promises to bring a tense, emotional story to the big screen, blending survival, isolation, and hope themes in a decimated world. Really good one. I'll give you a quick summary here. The plot of Dog Stars takes place in the aftermath of a devastating pandemic that has decimated American society. The story follows a civilian pilot, played by Mescal, who lives alone on an abandoned airbase in Colorado, with only his dog for company. Isn't that cute? A tough ex-Marine is his unlikely companion, and together they must navigate the dangers of a world overrun by roaming invaders. The routine existence is upended when a mysterious transmission breaks through the pilot's radio, sparking a glimmer of hope. There you go. We'll leave it at that for now. And it's a really good story. So if you're interested, keep an eye out for this coming up. Now, the next one, just as much fun. Probably my current favorite, okay, back up. At least my current favorite horror director, writer, producer at the moment, and possibly my favorite director, writer, producer, period, Mike Flanagan. He did Haunting of Hill House. He did Midnight Mass. Both are great. He did the sequel to The Shining, which was so well done. He's done a ton of Stephen King adaptations. Well, one of his new projects includes a post-apocalyptic zombie horror movie. He hasn't done a zombie horror movie yet. So, Beloved horror director Mike Flanagan is all set to produce a new zombie movie, which will feature returning icons from previous projects. Flanagan already has his plate full with a bunch of other things. Let's see. Yep, the movie here is Mike Flanagan is producing zombie movie Epilogue featuring Kate Siegel, who happens to be his wife in real life, and David Dashmalshin. He was from Late Night with the Devil and a few other things. I'll never be able to pronounce his name. But either way, Flanagan is a top-notch director, and I look forward to... He's not directing this, he's only producing it, but so far he's only put his name on quality projects. We'll see where it goes, but I can always use another zombie film, that's for sure. Ed Celio said, when is the last time you actually dialed a phone number? And Ed Celio, Ian says, Grandma's house, 1998. Yeah, I would say... The last friend of mine that I knew, we got rid of our dial tone in the late 80s, or dial phone, probably 1988, 89. I remember the day I came home and had a push button phone, and I was like, what? Touch tone phone? Now I can call all the 1-800 numbers. Anyway, no, but it was cool. Yeah, I was less than 10, that's for sure. And then my best friend Danny, his grandmother, he lived with his grandmother. He had one they had one until, must have been damn close to graduation. I'm thinking 97, maybe 96. And I thought that would be the end of it. And then we bought our house down Digby Neck, and my next door neighbor, Matt, went over to visit him one day, and he's like, hey, let's go visit my grandmother. She lives next door. This would have been, 12 years ago. So what's that put us at? We're 20. Yeah. So probably 2012. She still had a dial tone phone, and it was still active. I didn't think they even supported those anymore. So I didn't actually dial out on it, but I did get to see it, picked it up, heard the dial tone. So that was the last time I saw one in the wild. Pretty crazy. Pippin says he did Sons of Anarchy, I think. Now, he might have had a part in that. He very well could have. I believe Kurt Sutter was the director, writer, who definitely could have used an editor in that movie for sure. Somebody that would just cut it down a little bit. But either way, so looking forward to it. Mike Flanagan, zombie production. Should be pretty good, I think, anyhow.
Now you stay on the back roads, and you keep your gun handy. Our country is still full of thieving, murdering patriots.
Get ready for I Read It on the Internet. So, another week and another problem with FEMA. Imagine that. I can't even imagine. So, did you guys hear about this story? Again, we're going to talk about the gray man idea. I mean, we talk about it all the time anyhow. But one of those things that you probably should maybe, I know we all love to advertise the things we're proud of, the things we're passionate about. So I'm not going to judge anybody for doing it. But it is one of those things. So if you didn't hear this story, you've probably been under a rock this week. But here it is. This comes from our preppers over on Reddit. And this is from Chief 7064. Based on the news out of FEMA, those that include not flying political flags in their preps are spot on. Makes you a target or a house to skip for aid. Now, if all I saw was that right there, I would think, wow, maybe not. That doesn't sound like a legit article. But I had already heard that it was a legit story, that somebody actually lost their position. They didn't get fired, of course. They just got moved around in FEMA. But this is a legit story where this lady said to her workers from FEMA, don't give aid to people with Trump signs in their front yard. Holy shit. If the shoe were on the other foot, what would have happened, folks? This one blew me out of the water. Now, of course, she's now come up with a bit of a cover story saying it's because I was facing lots of violence from folks from Trump supporters. And so therefore I was looking out for the best interest of my employees. Well, I'm going to say that's probably why you got moved to a new position, because they didn't find a whole lot of credence in that. Here we are. So we're talking one team leader, but sucks if that's the emergency relief team that walked by your family and didn't check because of a political flag on your property. While we believe this is an isolated incident, we have taken measures to remove the employee from the role and are investigating the matter to prevent this from happening ever again. That's always what they say after something bad happens, I know. The employee who issued this guidance had no authority and was given no direction to tell teams to avoid these homes. And we are reaching out to the people who may not have been reached as a result of this incident, the FEMA spokesperson said. So Again, somebody who, imagine this, somebody working in government who didn't have the power to do something, but overstepped their authority. I know. So there you go. Imagine sitting at home. I mean, again, we should all know that I'm from the government. I'm here to help. Usually doesn't actually mean that, but here we go. Here's a couple of comments responding. As a rule of thumb, I try to neither agree nor disagree with people. This is actually a really good comment here, guys. I try to neither agree nor disagree with people, in person, that is. I get it all out on Reddit. Other than those I'm in a close relationship with, there's no value in it. I try not to advertise my stance or beliefs or opinions. Most folks will assume you're in their tribe, whatever it is. This isn't just a reference to American political parties, and that is valuable to me. You know, that is a great point. If you just sit there and listen to people, you don't have to agree. You just don't have to actively disagree. Confirmation bias is going to convince them that you agree with them, and things are going to go a lot smoother. Sure, I have strongly held beliefs, but I don't see any personal gain to be had from advertising them or confronting others about differing ones. Just give people horoscope type responses and they will love it. I love it. Or better yet, horoscope or fortune cookie responses. How great is that? And we got one more here. No political signs, no bumper stickers on your cars showing anything, not your pets, not your family size, your marathon time. No sharing political views online. Basic low impact personal security. Also, no one is coming to save you. Now, here is something that over the years I've gotten slightly better at, but I will say I was born with an awful case of diarrhea. And I'm going to let that sit for a minute just to be uncomfortable. Verbal diarrhea, that would be. And as a kid and as a young adult, I don't know if it was born out of insecurity or if it was just out of the fact that I couldn't stand uncomfortable silences, but I always just had to talk. And quite often I would have to talk, especially when folks disagreed with me. I've gotten much better at it now. I'm a bit better at flying under the radar, but either way, it's one of those things. Here we go. Let's go back and read what the comments had to say here. And says, Lone Canadian says, I still got a landline. They work even when you lose power or cell service. I want to throw that out there. I think around here, a lot of them still do. But if you live in some of the newer subdivisions and things like that, and you sign up for a landline, there's a really good chance that it still doesn't work when the power's out, because most of the new ones are like voice over DSL. Even though they don't look like it, they don't act like it, the power goes out, you lose them as well. So just one of those things to think about. If you live in an old area, like Lone Canadian, I know you do, then you shouldn't have any problems. But in the newer areas, something to check in. Ask the phone company, hey, if I sign up for this bundle you're trying to sell me, will I actually get a physical hardwired landline that stays on if the power goes out? Because they are becoming more and more rare. And then Ian says, I was thinking more along the lines of a rotary phone. Very true. I worked with a lady who was about 10 years older than me at Home Hardware many moons ago, and she lived in a very remote village down Digby Neck again. And she actually remembered a time when you would call up the operator. There was a local lady who ran the switchboard, and you would say, hello, Mabel, put me through to so-and-so. Now, I'm not that old. I do. How about this? Anybody remember party lines? I didn't have one, but my cousins did, that's for sure. And then Pippin says, seems like that's what they say every time they get caught, talking about the FEMA. Canned response. I think they just keep them typed up. It's like, the New York Times has obituaries written up for everybody over the age of 60 who's a public figure, and they just automatically run them. I think they have these canned responses the same way. It's like, okay, guys, time to troubleshoot. We got to get in there and take the temperature down of the people that hate us. We got to get rid of the Twitter mobs. Boink, hit a button and send out a great, catchphrase of the moment. And Ian says, I think there was a nurse in one of John Willis's recent live streams that said they will put MAGA hats, Trump shirts at the bottom of the priority list. Wow. Again, that doesn't, that doesn't surprise me, and it's kind of sad. And Pippin says, like to talk shit. I wasn't too bad. I wasn't ever looking for fights back in the day, but I just couldn't help myself. I just had to talk, and maybe oversharing. Maybe that's a better way of putting it than some of the others. But yeah, either way, again, I'm not the best example of being a gray man. I mean, just my, physical stature makes me stand out a little bit more than some folks would. But I do, being a content creator and that sort of thing, I guess I kind of get out there. Being a people person, I get out there. But again, I guess this is, don't bring any more unwarranted attention to you than you have to. That's really all there is to it.
Nothing like eating under an open sky, even if it is radioactive.
Dropping the dime on precious metals. Okay, so we are moving things around just a little bit. So I have originally dropping the dime was just strictly a precious metals report. And what I found out was that when things aren't very active in the precious metals avenue, you end up with a lot of repetitive stories. The same week, gold's up 10%, gold's down 10%, silver's up 5%, silver's down 5%. So I decided we are going to expand dropping the dime to precious metals and a financial report. That way, when I get some pretty cool or interesting, or in this instance, scary stories regarding the financial end of things, I can share them in this spot here. So, and Pippin says, hey, diarrhea of the mouth can affect many. Yeah, it sure can. You know, I've got one of my kids inherited that as well, and he's doing better. But it's just one of those things. So here we go. This story got shared to me. I can't remember who sent it to me, but it was sent to me once, and then I found it a couple more times. You guys have probably heard about this in the States as well. This comes from ctvnews.ca, and this is something that's happening a ton up here right now. Read between the lines when I read you this headline and tell me what you think they're going to mention in this story. Scotiabank to eliminate Scotiabank. So in Canada, we have basically 5 major banks, and Scotiabank's one of them. Scotiabank to eliminate tellers at some branches, including Carleton University. So they are eliminating tellers, amongst other things, at a whole bunch of their branches across the country, not in one province, not in one area, all across. Here you go. You ready for this? Scotiabank is eliminating tellers at some of its branches, including one at Carleton University, and switching to advice services only. In a letter to customers obtained by CTV News, Scotiabank says as of March 3rd, 2025, the branch inside the university's Patterson Hall will, here it is, no longer be offering over-the-counter cash services. So I had to go in today to set up a wire transfer. And it took the lady a little while to do it. I love our local, it's a credit union. It took a little getting used to, but they're great. I love the credit union. So I'm talking to the lady. I said, did you see the story about Scotiabank shutting down a bunch of their branches or turning them into advice only, which to me, all I can picture is, Lucy from Charlie Brown sitting there with a can out with a 5-cent thing, except they'll have to have some sort of tap or PayPal app because you won't be able to give them cash because they can't take it. But to me, that's the death knell of a bank at that point. When you're saying you're shutting you're not shutting branches down. Well, number one, if they're eliminating tellers, jobs are going. But more than that, they're eliminating cash-only services. And I was talking to the lady at the credit union, and she gives me kind of a funny look, and she's like, between you and me, I think that's the way all the banks are going to go before too much longer. And I thought, man, that just made the old chill go down my back just a little bit. I like cash. I like precious metals. I also really like Lightning and Bitcoin, not because I'm investing in it, but because it's a really good way to send money to certain people much faster and much easier. Like, let's just put it this way. So I have an account down in the States, and I needed to send some money up to me for a big purchase that we're making. And in order to have that wire transferred from that bank to up here, holy shit, the amount of steps, the amount of information I need to have. Now, also, I occasionally send funds to someone south of the border for work that they do for me. And I do that using Bitcoin or Lightning, and I can do that with an address and 30 seconds, and it's done. So there is definitely a place for that. Wire transfers are a pain in the ass, especially across, country borders. I know most of you don't have to deal with that, but either way, she said she thinks things are going to go that route, and I don't doubt it. So it says no longer offering over-the-counter cash services. That includes taking out and depositing cash, making bill payments, and foreign exchange cash transactions. Scotiabank says the change is due to the increasing trend toward digital transactions and services, and that the move will allow us to strengthen our focus on helping you reach your financial goals. How nice is that? They just want to help you reach their financial goals while reaching into your pocket and not allowing you to have the cash that you want. Whew. Anyhow, where was I the other day? I was at the border the other day. Had to pay my, few dollars to Trudeau because whenever I go down and pick up my parcels, they come back across the border and I have to pay my 5% GST on that stuff. So I go inside and she's like saying to the guy ahead of me, "Oh, sorry. The IT guy's here. He just reset stuff. It could be a few minutes to an hour before our computers are back up. I can't take credit card payments." And she goes, "Do you have cash?" And he said, "I do not." And I pipe up from behind him. I'm like, "I do." She's like, "Oh, well, I'll help you, sir." And I go up and I'm in and out in 30 seconds. So again, it is nice to carry cash on you for multiple reasons. You guys have heard the story about the big Rogers IT outage up here a couple of years back. The only thing that allowed us to stay on vacation for that extra day was the fact that I had some cash on hand. One Step Closer says the real reason is there is no transaction fee on cash. Very true. It would be hard to charge, although I could see them doing it. I know they charge it on full rolls of coin when you pick it up. So one automated banking machine will remain on site. The closest full-service branch to Carleton is located at 828 Bank Street, about a 40-minute walk away. We are changing to an advice-only branch. And to me, that tells me eventually it's going to shut down. It's unclear how many in Ottawa, blah, blah, blah. So there's your story for this week on the financial end of things. We're going to see more and more of this. I'm sure it'll come a time when some places won't take physical cash anymore, but barter's where it's at, man. If you happen to see Chris Dixon's post on Facebook I think it was today or yesterday, paraphrasing, it says something like, "You don't really need to ask, but I definitely take barter for my services." I was like, man, I love seeing people put that right out there. So anyway, Scotiabank dropping cash from a lot of their banks, and I'm going to say this is a trend to watch out for going forward.
There's a lot of money in selling the end of the world.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of money in selling a political ideology that ends in bread lines.
Let's reach into the Faraday cage. All right, so the Faraday cage. I actually, we're going to share a email that I got from a dude a little bit later on here, a fellow delinquent, and he's the one that actually gave the name or suggested the name the Faraday cage for this, which I love. And this is This Week in Tech. So if I have a tech story or two, then this is where I end up sharing them with you. So here you go. We got 3 quick tech-related stories that I thought tickled my fancy and grabbed me this week. This one's kind of cool. This comes from iPhoneincanada.ca. Apple's new iPhone reboot feature shakes up police access. So at least in this instance, it's something that works in your favor. And if you didn't hear about this, or if you happen to notice your iPhones were miraculously rebooting if you haven't used them in a little while, it's because of a new update that Apple implemented. And it's basically, it reboots your phone to a more secure state if it hasn't been used in a while. And there's a funny portion to this story. So here we go. Apple quietly added a new security feature that automatically reboots iPhones. This change is known as an inactivity reboot, essentially resets the phone to a highly secure state, enhancing protection against unauthorized access. Here you go. This is the best part, worst part, depending on what side of the fence you land on. According to expert, this new feature is causing issues for law enforcement. Imagine that. Who report that iPhones that have been stored for examination for quite some time are suddenly rebooting. Initially, officials were confused by this, unsure why they couldn't access data. However, the security researcher at some institute confirmed the existence of this feature, sharing screenshots of the relevant code. So they're storing away these phones. They have them in a state that allows them to go in and access information. I'm guessing they didn't do it when they should have done it. And now those phones have rebooted. I kind of like that. I'm not, I use an iPhone. I won't lie. That's what I use. I guess that's my choice over, an Android phone. But either way, I don't mind when they implement things like this. I like things that, like a dead man switch, when things, even when you haven't done something for a certain period of time, you can make sure that it goes back to a safe state. I'm a big fan of set it and kind of forget it. Similar to the light bulbs I reviewed a couple of weeks ago, where you put them in your light, you use them just like normal, and the only time you worry about them is if the power goes out, because then the battery kicks in and you still have light. Just genius. Real quick here, we're going to look at the comments. It says, One Step Closer said, there's only one Capital One branch within 12 miles of me, and I live in the Dallas suburbs. It's happening. I know everybody, they're going digital, but if you want real cash, I mean, bank machines are where it's at for now, but at some point, they're going to start cutting those back too. I was quite impressed with my local credit union. They recently introduced 10s, 20s. Well, they always had 20s, but now they have 10s and 50s as well at the bank machine. So you can get stuff that's a little bit bigger. But I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but I'm starting to see more and more businesses with signs up that say, we will not take $100 bills. I'm going to say, I'm guessing they've been, treated fraudulently, but here's a problem that I see with that. As inflation goes up and up and up, the standard currency of ATMs has been $20 bills for 3 decades now. And a $20 bill ain't worth what it used to be. So here's the thing. Also, to store a bunch of cash on hand, 20s take up a lot of space. So, it's a good problem to have, I suppose. But if you wanted to carry as much cash as you could in the smallest amount of space, hundreds are the way that most people would do it. But again, a lot of places aren't taking them anymore. 50s, I guess, are the sweet spot. Either way, something to think about. Ian says, yet the AirPods I marked through Apple as lost that someone stole from me at a hotel stay, still use them daily as I keep track on Find My. Isn't that a shame? I hate that, man. Anyway, so new feature. Keep an eye out for it. Make sure if you're, always wait to run updates until you're sure it's going to be a good thing. Next, got 3 stories here. This one was sent to me by Mr. Chris Dixon himself. And if you guys thought you were the only ones trying to put a ban on TikTok, well, Justin Trudeau, just like the apartment above a meth house, is basically trying to live off the fumes of the person below him. And he decided to say, well, we're going to ban TikTok too. Hold my beer. Or in this case, hold my old... No, it's probably red wine. I bet he drinks red wine out of a sippy cup. What the federal ban on TikTok's Canadian operations means for you and me. Mainly me, not you. Government may be slow walking an eventual TikTok ban. So the whole idea, hey, John Palmer, good to see you. So again, this is one of those things where people get used to the idea of something slowly. The old, the off misquoted frog in a boiling pot. Apparently it doesn't actually work that way, but everybody knows the illustration, so I'm going to mention it anyhow. The feds ordered an end to TikTok's Canadian operations on Wednesday. So they're shutting down all operations in Canada, as in all employees are no longer employed or very soon. They're going to have to leave the country if they're not from Canada. And their biggest concern, of course, is that all the information that goes into TikTok is being scraped off and sent to the Chinese government. Now, here's the deal. I really don't use TikTok anymore. I got an account with 20,000 subscribers that I never post to. I prefer Instagram Reels, but they're all the same shit either way. But if they I don't know why everybody has such a hard on for knocking TikTok out of the way. If you truly believe that your data is being scraped and sent over to China, there is so many other low-hanging pieces of fruit. You could be stopping people who are uploading malicious content. I mean, you could shut down the Temu app. There's 100 things you could be doing, but everybody seems to pick on TikTok because it's popular and well-known. The federal government ordered an end to TikTok's Canadian operations. The order to shut down the social media platform's Vancouver and Toronto offices came after a months-long national security review of the app. So maybe they found out more than we know. That's possible. But either way, yeah, they're shutting it down. For most Canadians, the decision to end the social media platform's operations ain't going to do much. Social media platforms' Canadian operations ending, these workers will be required to leave the country depending on their status. I've noticed that a lot of the Western countries are taking a much more hardline stance on immigration as of late, and Canada has definitely been following suit with that, which surprised the shit out of me. And I think that's truly just because the Liberals don't think they're going to get reelected. Now, of course, TikTok had to give a notice about this, shutting down TikTok's Canadian offices and destroying hundreds of well-paying local jobs is not in anyone's best interest. And today's shutdown order will do just that. Now, again, I don't want the government to shut down businesses. I'm a huge fan of private enterprise doing what private enterprise does. I hate when the government gets involved in things because they only ever make it worse. People don't understand that. But either way, just don't do it. They said, here's a question for you. another thing, if a headline leads with a question, the answer is almost always no. But here you go. Should Canadians stop using TikTok? Well, that depends. It's at their discretion. They said Canadians will have to draw their own conclusions. Federal government employees haven't been able to install TikTok for quite some time because they were pretty sure they were sending information back. But either way, just be careful what you share. I mean, who knows what really is getting recorded and sent back to folks in, ivory towers and all that. But here you go. One step closer says Trudeau drinks white wine spritzers. Yep, I agree completely. That's probably it. And he sips them with his pinky up too, I'm thinking. So there you go. Next, and this one just popped up this morning, and I had to add it. It's a real short one, but it's kind of scary. This comes from Boston25news.com. Cybersecurity issue leads to bare shelves at Massachusetts grocery store. This is where the rubber meets the road for us preppers, guys. And simple as this. 2 major grocery store chains across Massachusetts have been the target of a cybersecurity attack. Cybersecurity attack, something you can do your best to prepare for personally, but if you're ever going to be affected by one, it's probably going to be on a wider scale when the companies you deal with, whether it's your banks. I mean, we've seen it here in Canada recently with bookstores, drugstores. There was car dealerships down in the States. It just never seems to stop. The parent company of both Shop and Stop and Hannaford warned that some pharmacy and e-commerce operations have been affected by a cybersecurity issue. I like how their, press release says, yeah, a bit of our pharmacy and a bit of our online has been affected, but don't worry, we're good. Our teams are taking, here we go. This is PR again. Our teams are taking steps to assess and mitigate the issue. I bet you are. Probably shitting your pants behind the scenes. Boston 25 News visited Stop and Shop's Dedham location on Tuesday morning and discovered, what did they find? Empty shelves in the produce, meat, poultry sections of the store. How does that work? That's not part of the pharmacy. That's not part of the online section. But there you go. Due to IT system outages that are affecting some of our behind-the-scenes applications, product deliveries may be slightly delayed. Well, delayed enough that your shelves are empty. So again, just have some stuff on hand so this kind of shit doesn't affect us, guys. Because, man, it could be really, whether it's prescriptions or baby formula or a bunch of other things that are damn near essential. Keep them on hand. Stock up. We know this, but it's good to be reminded once in a blue moon.
Because if the worst should happen tomorrow, the world is going to need you to build a better day after.
Now we're going to recap this week in the workshop. All right, guys, this is where we take a look at what I got done this week. Again, not to brag, but simply to keep me accountable. Now, the list is noticeably shorter this week, and it's not because I got less done. It's because I did more of a couple of things. My son-in-law and I, Curtis, have been working our baguettes off, absolutely going crazy with the work at the daycare. So we're going to talk about this. But first off this week, just after I got off the show with you guys last Thursday night, I get a nasty message from was a previous tenant. I didn't realize that they had moved out, but they give me their notice. What was last Thursday? The 7th. They said, I moved out at the end of the month and I'd like my deposit back. And I may have mentioned this a little bit, but after the show, when he found out he wasn't getting his deposit back, he threatened me and said he was going to put me on blast on social media and YouTube. And he did that exact thing. And yeah, simple as that. Again, maybe I should be a little bit more quiet about what I do outside of the property management into things, but folks are going to find it if they want to or they don't. And reading his messages absolutely proved to me how much people can have their own head up their own asses. To be convinced. I mean, I could literally show him the receipts, the text messages that he sent me where he said something to me. And then to be absolutely convinced that you said the complete opposite just blows me out of the water. Again, I'm never ceased to be amazed by, I have tons of great tenants, but I'm never ceased to be amazed by the ones who aren't. And I say this every time. That one of my mantras in property management is everyone is the perfect tenant until they're not. And whether it's because of personal issues, mental issues, drugs, finances, whatever it is, people, of course, are always going to look after their best interests, and they're always going to paint themselves as the hero or the victim. So it is what it is. I think everything's worked out. I think they've moved on, and that should be the end of it. But if it isn't, well, I got a good lawyer. So there you go. All right. So what did we get done this week? 6 classrooms painted, and they're not just small classrooms. They are classrooms that were 3 and 4 offices wide. Very big area. We are down to 1 classroom and 1 office left to paint, and the office is very small, and it's the smallest classroom I left till the end. And then we're painting, oh, thank God, Becky came up with a new idea to paint a stripe all the way around the hallway instead of painting the entire hallways. That's going to save me a ton of time. I'm not going to need to rent some extra equipment. So beyond that, we are looking at 1 classroom, which I'm probably going to try to paint tomorrow. Classroom, hallway stripe, 1 office, put baseboards back on, and a little bit of flooring down. And those renos are, the rough renos are done. So I'm stoked. 2 more weeks, I'm hoping, and we'll be at least into the flooring, or maybe even done the flooring. So there you go. It's been a big project. I'm really excited. Within a couple of weeks, I'll be able to tell you about what my next project's going to be, and it's going to be really good. I'm so excited. I want to share it, but I just can't yet. So a couple more weeks. One other thing I did, Curtis and I have done up at the upstairs renovation, is a little bit of drywall fixing in the bathrooms. We had to cut out, well, sorry, I didn't. The plumbers had to cut out a bunch of stuff in order to expand the bathrooms. So that's been fixed up. We left that till the end. It's going to be an easy do, but it's just one of those things where it's like mud and sand, mud and sand, mud and sand. It's going to take 4 days to do because, I don't just live there and I can just pop over, right? If you didn't catch this week's video, came out yesterday. It's trending okay. It's 4th best out of the last 10. I did a cold weather blackout video just with a bunch of tips and a bunch of gear for handling a power outage in the middle of winter. And beyond that, Curtis and I, we did 2 12-hour days. And in between the 2 days, we snuck to Edmonton, which is a 4.5-hour round trip from Lloydminster where we were. So we worked 12-hour day, drove to Edmonton, watched the hockey game, drove back, got up in the morning and did it all over again. And it was a hell of a time. One of the best games I've been to in a long time. Had some great movie nights with the ladies this week. Again, watched some horror movies that most folks wouldn't really care about, but it's funny how this happened, but collecting physical media, both music on vinyl and movies on Blu-rays, started as a prep, and it's turned into kind of a passion for us. We've always been big movie fans anyway, but now we've kind of turned it into sitting down and watching a movie as a family, put my phone down, leave it alone, and we just sit there and then we talk about it afterwards, and I really enjoy it. And my girls have turned into movie snobs, which is great to have some, not snobs, but lovers, and it's great to have. Not sure if I mentioned this last week, but I just picked up a siphon. It's like a 12-volt siphon pump system for gas. It's designed to have a fairly thin pipe that will go down and bypass that shutoff valve or the upside down, whatever it happens to be. There's a ball valve in there or a check valve that keeps you from both being able to siphon. And if you flip over, it doesn't leak. So yeah, anyway, looking forward to testing that out quite a bit. Should make a pretty good video. I have been trying to, if you guys don't know, I'm not much for a belt. So I don't like carrying things on my hips. So I like to carry things around my neck. And I recently decided to downgrade or get a smaller version of the Leatherman. I've got this one here. This is the Leatherman Skele-Tool. It's smaller and it has, I'll show you, it has a blade right there. It has everything I need on a regular basis. A blade, set of pliers with wire cutters and that sort of thing. It has a bottle opener, which actually works great for opening cans of paint. And then it has 4 bits for a screwdriver. It's got 2 slot ones there. They fit in here. And then on the top, it has 2 Phillips bits that you can pop out and swap it out with. Now, that's great. But again, I don't want to leave it in my pocket because it's going to go missing all the time. So I ended up ordering online a Kydex sheath that's made to go on a belt. So I'll show you this right here. And on the back right here was where the belt clip went. I modified it slightly, took that out, stole Patrick Rohrman's design here. And I have, we got paracord and a quick break coupling like that. And now I can carry my somewhat, it works out to be about twice as heavy as the neck knife. Not much different than the neck knife and the flashlight I was carrying for a while. It's taken a little getting used to, but it's very secure. As you can see, it takes a lot for it to go in, a lot for it to come out, but it gives me all the tools I need, and I don't have to keep it in my pockets, and I don't have to have it on my belt. So a modification of a design. I picked this up on Amazon. This ended up being, I thought it was really cool. The packaging was awesome, and it's American made and designed and assembled by military veterans, which is kind of cool. And then we spent quite a bit of time on the weekend organizing our storage areas for a project that's coming up. We got our Xmas. I wrote it down as Xmas. I said Xmas. What is wrong with you, Tim? Not enough bourbon. That's the problem. We got our Christmas decorations out for the missus. And that was the extent of my week. It really was truly almost not every free minute, but a lot of my free minutes going into painting. And Becky and the girls are going away this weekend with my oldest daughter to say yes to the dress. So I'm going to be a bachelor all weekend, which means I'm going to do a half day tomorrow and a full day on Saturday, back up to daycare painting, because shit, that's what I love to do. Simple as that.
And they're here to cleanse the planet of the virus of the human race.
Let's take a look at what's left while we empty the cache. All right, so this is a renamed segment. And this one is, okay, so emptying the cache. I used to call it food for thought, but I couldn't come up with a better name. So I really didn't like food for thought. It's really just a catch-all of things I want to talk about at the very end. It's a way to wind up the show. Well, not quite, because we do have the community mailbag to finish up with. But so this is kind of the catch-all of things that are interesting, could be, you know, designed for us to talk about or think about. And I'm going to incorporate, if you guys remember, without rule of law, we're going to read a card here. And as we finish up, you guys can, you know, type out your responses or whatever. But if you haven't seen this card game, this is it right here. A buddy of mine sent it to me a while back. And it's, are you ready for Without Rule of Law, a world without rule of law? And it's just kind of fun. It's really good discussion questions on all these cards. So here you go. This one's scenario number 11. Have you taken steps to learn basic wilderness survival, bushcraft skills such as making fires, building a shelter, filtering water, knot tying, navigation, tool making, foraging, fishing, hunting, and trapping, first aid, and herbal remedies? So have you done, or have you ever taken courses or learned on your own basic wilderness survival bushcraft skills? Go ahead and throw it out there. I mean, I've done some, a little bit, but we'll talk about that in a little while. So here we go. If you guys haven't seen this yet, you got to check this out. Harbor Freight, I know, Harbor Freight, just announced some really cool new stuff in the backup power market. These are some sexy looking power stations. Predator. Oh man, I love it. They look at the different sizes. I've got to get my hands on one of these to test out. I would love it if Harbor Freight would send me stuff to test, because man, I want to tell you, my obsession with Harbor Freight backup power, it gets kind of expensive. So last week at SEMA, there was November 8th in Las Vegas, Harbor Freight previewed 4 new Predator portable power stations. Geez, there were some 10s there. Some Ps. Oh man, ideal for powering tablets, laptops, fridges, TVs, and Bluetooth wireless speakers. That's an odd one to add. All feature AC and USB charging outlets, while the lithium iron phosphate battery delivers more than 3,500 charge cycles for 10 years of daily use. Pretty cool. Portable power stations will be variable in a variety of running watts, 350, 600, 1,200, and 2,000. I'd love to get my hands on that 2,000 watt one. They're just so pretty, aren't they? But I do. I really appreciate the Predator line of things. They've done really, really well. So if you haven't seen it yet, the prices aren't listed in here, but I believe the high-end one was going to be around 1,000 and the low-end one was going to be like $199, and then never the twain shall meet. But that's that. And if you thought that was enough, well, Harbor Freight outdid themselves, because they also announced a new Predator super quiet inverter generator. There you go. Predator 11,500 watt tri-fuel super quiet inverter generator. 11,500 watt tri-fuel inverter generator. I don't know if there's any others on the market. There might be, but holy crap, I love it. Predator 11,000 watt tri-fuel, operates on gasoline, propane, and nat gas. Ultra powerful 459cc engine, Added convenience, the 11.5 generator has a remote start and stop with a key fob that works from up to 100 feet away. Push button electric start powers the generator, no choke required. Using pure sine wave inverter technology, the generator powers sensitive electronics. Yep, I'm rather excited about that. And then they have a 2500 inverter generator that's coming out at just 43 pounds. Definitely going up against the Honda end of things. But either way, man, wouldn't I love to? I already have a tri-fuel. I don't need another tri-fuel. But man, I would love to have one. And yeah, anyway, to test it out. Totally just to test it out and review it for you guys. And not because I just want it. Yeah. All right. What do we got next for you here? All right. Hang on here. Let's go back and we're going to do, Ian says, did you just say 1.21 gigawatts? And yes, I did say gigawatts because that's how Doc Brown pronounced it back in the 80s. One Step Closer says, I love my Predator dual fuel generator. I also love your Predator dual fuel generator, One Step. And okay, so have you taken steps to learn basic wilderness survival? What do we got here? One Step Closer says, just a few. I'm going to call it baby steps. I like that. Jeff Stark says, yes, I love bushcraft skills and bushcraft YouTube channels to live vicariously through. Yes, we all live through vicariously through some YouTube channels. Lone Canadian says, not much I can't do, and I totally believe that. Hardway Alaska says, Tim, look up Trappers Inc. They are close to you and show you how to trap. I got to do that. I will definitely look that up. And then to go back a little bit, One Step Closer says they have a storage slot on the top to store the cords. Oh, we're talking about the power stations. I didn't see that. What a great, I love that. What a stupid, simple little design thing. But either way, yeah. Oh, I get so excited when Harbor Freight decides that it's time to announce new products.
It's the apocalypse, end of days. The judgment day, the end of the world, my friend.
Let's dig into the community mailbag. All right. Before we go any further, Lone Canadian says, well, if you buy it and test it, I might know someone that would buy it from you after your testing. That is a great idea. I actually have done that with my original Harbor Freight generator. So maybe I will do that, Lone Canadian, and I will take you up on that. Because my brother-in-law picked up my first Harbor Freight generator from me because he fell in love with it. I could start a whole thing where I bring Harbor Freight generators up to Canada, do a review on it, and then sell it to one of my friends. And then once a year, we can get together and I can do a yearly review on theirs. That'd be fun. Anyway, here we are. So the community mailbag, where we take a look into the mailbag, and we take a look and see what kind of feedback we got from the community. Good, bad, and ugly from all of my fellow delinquents. I'm not calling you ugly. I'm just saying some of the feedback gets nasty on YouTube once in a while. So this one came from a person who I'm going to leave their name out because they didn't tell me if I could share this or not. And if they didn't, then I'm only going to share it anonymously. But it was a great email, and it made me smile when I got it. It said, hey, not sure if you remember me, but we met at Prepper Camp in NC, North Carolina, 2023. And then again, shortly after at Midwest Preparedness Project. I wrote up your pillars and rules and emailed them to you. I was hoping to see you at Prepper Camp again, but based on Helene's visit to the region, it was probably a good call. Since I'm not sure when I'd see you again, I decided to send you this email. In my 35 years of service in the U.S. Army, the one thing that always gives me a sense of pride is when one of my former soldiers would contact me out of the blue and thank me for all the lessons I gave them. I wanted to let you know that I sincerely thank you for the information and lessons you gave me at Prepper Camp. As I prepared to go again this year, I looked back at the last year and assessed which classes had the biggest impact. Your preparedness class was by far my biggest impact to my prepping over the last year. Now, guys, it is so easy to just get lost in the going to an event, doing everything, and then leaving. And it becomes not a chore, but just something you do because it's something you do. And then you get emails like this, and it's like, holy shit. For a few minutes, I kind of forgot why I was doing it. I was like, man, that's awesome. And he says, hey, my wife and I have been in the midst of renovations, and I took your advice to follow the different tradesmen during their work asking questions. I now have a deeper level of knowledge and skills that I did not have last year, to include electrical, plumbing, framing, floor work, and some finishing, although I dislike that the most. I understand. It seems to be the hardest thing to, I don't know, just it's tough. Also, throughout this time, I have continued to salvage and acquire various materials, and I now have a very organized and comprehensive mini hardware store. Finally, I was inspired, based on your advice, to eat the elephant one bite at a time, and I renovated a room off my garage to make my personal workshop and office, attaching a few photos to show the progression, but your class and advice gave me the confidence to do it, and I did about 90% myself. So I wanted to say thank you and let you know that your advice and lessons have made me a more knowledgeable and confident person. Holy crap, isn't that awesome? That made me smile beyond belief. I loved it. Thank you, sir, kind sir, for sending those great words. I loved it. And I wanted to say, those rules that I talk about in preparedness, I still live by them. The other night, excuse me, I got a call. Well, actually, in the morning, I had to go over to the 12 unit. I went down into the storage area, the furnace area, and the floor was wet. And I thought, damn it, I got to go out of town. So I realized it was just a pinhole. I didn't have to shut it off. But again, you keep a Rolodex. Yeah, not really a Rolodex, but you have contacts. You have people who are experts in your town. You pay them well. You tip them occasionally. You pay them quickly, and you keep a good relationship with them. So I called up Rods, and they went and they they fixed it. No problem. Laying in bed at 10:30 at night, I get a message from that same day. Hey, Tim, hot water's not working in the 12 unit. I'm like, damn it. I'm thinking in my head, what happened? Did they shut something off? Did they forget to relight the hot water tank? Did the hot water? I didn't know what happened. So I go over and I start troubleshooting. I check everything I can. And this is a very big, excuse me, more of an industrial or commercial grade hot water tank, something I've never worked on before. The system is very similar, but it has some extra moving parts, literally. So I go through it all. I can't figure out how to make that. I can't get it to go. But again, I'm checking everything. And there's this little motor at the top that automatically cranks the damper. So I'm like, well, I just tapped on it. And as soon as I did, that thing made an awful grinding noise. And I thought, oh my God. So what happened was, guys, that morning we had a pinhole leak. It was completely unrelated to the damper motor going. And it has a failsafe built in that if it doesn't work, it closes. And if it closes, it won't light. So again, I call Chad, my guy, and he was there within 10 minutes. And he comes over and he takes the time to troubleshoot, to bypass the damper motor, safely, of course, to show me how to do it. But the best part about him, and I always help him, always, even when it was minus 45 and the wind was blowing and we were outside fixing a spraying pipe, I helped him. And he always takes the time to answer my questions. And so I learned, and now I know how to troubleshoot that hot water tank, and all because I have a good relationship with them. Anyway, so again, take your time and learn from the tradespeople. Pixel Updates. Great to see you in here. I want to shout you out tonight. I don't remember seeing that name in here before, but they said, this is a great channel. I agree. I think my wife thinks so too. Pixel says, have we ever talked about guard dogs on here? I have a bunch of Kangals that are great. We have not. However, we are getting a personal protection dog from my good buddy Joel Riles from Fortress Canine in the spring. We are buying Maeve, who is his long-term breeder. She's about 5 years old, so she's not super old, but she's not young. I'll definitely bring Joel back on to do a show, but I will definitely share my journey and Becky's journey with Maeve and how it goes. So hang in there and you'll find out. Yeah. And if you have something you want to send in or anything, I'd love to hear from you. And then Pixel says there are absolutely zero competent tradespeople in my area. That really, really sucks, guys, when that happens. Sometimes it helps. I don't know. I don't have a solution for this, but I do have a suggestion or two. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to, go to the hardware store and talk to the local owner or the people behind the counter and be like, hey, when you have a problem, who do you call? And they might say, oh, I know so-and-so. He's, 80 years old, but he's the best electrician around. He doesn't advertise anymore, but if you ask, he'll help you. Or there might be a handyman that you don't really know about. I'm not saying that this is your case. I'm just throwing out some suggestions. There might be somebody who works for cash that isn't maybe a certified electrician, but they're better than most electricians out there. And then sometimes, damn it, it's just about going to YouTube University. And that really sucks, especially when it's something like a hot water tank or your heat or that sort of thing. So I wish, and I hope maybe at some point there'll be more of this like handyman by Zoom or handyman by FaceTime, where you can FaceTime a handy person and they'll help you troubleshoot and talk through some things. I'm sure there's lots of people who wouldn't want to do it simply because of the liability, but yeah, either way. And Pixel says, I haven't been here in a few months. Still great to have you. And Lone Canadian says, I've met Tim's guard dogs. They're vicious. They are. They're so bad that I had to put an anti-barking collar on a couple of them today. Let's put it that way. All right, next. This comes from Dave H. 4106. And this was a comment on YouTube regarding my winter power outage video. And these were just some suggestions that they handed in from their list of winter preparations. So he said, number one, have a winter checklist. Sorry, a winter preparation and maintenance checklist. Attach and drain hoses, install covers, storm windows, etc. I've lived in places where all the exterior wall piping had an isolation valve. I like that. It says you can collect the drips in a bucket. Also leave the sink cabinet doors open to allow warm air in. Oh my God. Why is that the simplest solution I never thought of? Okay. So in my video, I mentioned, these numbers. Okay. Yeah. I understand what these numbers kind of correspond to. One of the best tips I've ever been given by anybody is if it's getting really, really cold, and if you especially live in a mobile home or something like that, you can leave your taps dripping or maybe even running ever so slightly. And people say, well, you're going to waste water. It's going to cost you money. Well, both answers to that are not as much as it's going to cost you if you get a massive leak under or somewhere that you can't see. But they did suggest collecting the drips in a bucket. Yep. That is so simple. I don't know why I didn't think of that. It's just dumb. Anyway, also leave the sink cabinet doors open to allow warm air in. Totally something I do, and totally something I didn't mention in my video. Salt or ice melt before it ices. Yes, great. Remove snow before it gets walked on and compacted. Yes. See, you're speaking my language. I used to run a snow removal business, and that's half the reason I would get up in the two things. The reason I'd get up early in the morning and the reason I went to a monthly flat rate contract was so that I could always get up and get the snow cleared before anybody ever walked on it. Plastic sheeting inside the windows, especially drafty ones. Yep, people used to pay me to put that on. Someone mentioned bubble wrap, but I never tried it. I've heard stories of where you can wet the window, put the bubble wrap up, and it will stay there. I don't know. Isolate closed doors, hang sheets or curtains. Part of the house you don't need to heat. Potable water storage, and don't forget to drink. Cold air is dry air. Holy shit, what great tips those were. And yes, we don't always think about it when it's cold that it's dry. But if you want to see the difference, now, do you sweat in Tennessee? Yeah, you do. But has anybody ever noticed you hang up clothes to dry and they're still damp down there after a day? Up here in Alberta, you hang up clothes to dry in a couple hours, they're dry. The air is so dry, it just sucks the moisture from you. And it's something you have to be careful of. So yes, cold air is dry air. Next comes from Mike Trissel, 5494. 2 days ago, how can it tell the difference between turning off the light and a power failure? Now, they're asking about that light bulb. And I thought I did a pretty good job explaining it in the video 2 weeks ago, but I'm going to give it a quick explanation. So we're talking about LED light bulbs that I mentioned earlier, excuse me, that have a battery, a rechargeable battery inside. And when the power goes out, it turns on the light. And it wants to know, how does it know the difference between turning off the light and a power failure? Well, I had to do quite a bit of digging to figure that out because it's not something that computes with your brain when you first hear it. So there is double circuitry in these light bulbs, and one is always sending out a bit of a signal. And if it sends out a signal and it goes out and it can't get past that open switch, it knows that the power is not turned off, just the switch is. So it goes out, it bounces back to itself, and that's it. So you've got a broken circuit there, right? Because it's been shut off. Now, if the power's off and it sends that little low voltage signal out, and what it does is it goes out on the circuit that it's on, and if it can complete that circuit through the neutral and send that low voltage signal back to the light bulb, that's what completes it and tells it, turn yourself on. It's really ingenious. I probably don't do it justice explaining it, but whoever come up with that idea was awesome. I love it. So that's how it tells the difference. If it goes out and finds an open switch, It can't complete that little low voltage circuit on the sync. And that's the other reason why you can't have two of those light bulbs on the same circuit, because it will confuse it. And when you turn the light off, it can still make a signal, blah, blah, blah. So what it does, it sends that little low voltage signal out. If the switch is still off, but it has no power coming to it, it goes, oh, I can complete the circuit on the neutral. It comes back to itself. It says, I found a complete circuit. Let's turn the light on from the battery. And also it uses less LEDs when the power's out than when it's powered by the wall. So kind of cool. Next comes from Robert Kubrick, 3738, talking about oversizing generators. And I never thought about this, but it's a great idea, and I'll probably bring it up in the next video. Going too large is almost as bad as going too small, or possibly worse, because it could bankrupt you to run it. Being a little facetious, but I get the idea. If you bought a smaller inverter, you could always add another one for increased capacity. Very true. And I guess I don't know if I mentioned the increased cost of fuel by going to a larger generator. So thank you for that. Really good. And the final one here, this is a pretty cool one. I like this. This came from an elderly individual, and they said, hey, Mr. Tim, I have a question about a trickle charger I installed on my nat gas portable home generator. I bought the one you were so kind to recommend. When I fire up the generator, should I disconnect the trickle charger until I shut the machine down? It says, love watching your videos. I'm too old, 77, for many more projects, even the ones I like watching you do. Thanks, Robin, No Toolman Dobbins. Well, you're modest, I have to say. But at 77, you got all kinds of time to still do incredible projects. I love hearing it. Now, do our bodies start wearing down? Sure they do. And you can't do things as fast as you used to. But hopefully I can be here as an encouragement for you to do things that you want to do. And thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And this one just absolutely made me smile. So I appreciated that. And so trickle charger. If you guys don't know what a trickle charger is, most folks do. You connect it to the positive and negative on the battery of a generator, and then it goes out and has a little low voltage charger that you plug into the wall, and it keeps that electric start battery topped up all the time. So when it's time to start the generator, you pull it out, you get fresh juice, you push the button, Bob's your uncle. So do they have to disconnect the trickle charger? Because you can put a breakaway in there. So short answer is no, you do not. If you're going to start your generator, you don't have to unhook that from the battery. Now, it's a good idea to unplug it from the wall, because a lot of generators have a charging circuit built into their system, and they will charge the battery. Now, I'm not saying it'll cause a problem, but I wouldn't want to try bringing two systems of power into a battery at the same time. Just what I'm thinking about. So unplug it from the wall. I always do. And the thing is, you're probably going to have to take that generator out from your garage, take it outside and run it. So you're going to have to unplug the trickle charger anyway. But no, you do not have to take it off the battery in order to run the generator. I've run multiple generators with multiple, well, not, each generator had a trickle charger on it, and I just unplug it from the wall and I start the generator up. So simple as that. So Robin, No Toolman Dobbins, I think you're a bit of a tool man. I think that's great. So thank you so much for taking the time to send me those comments. So folks, look at that. Almost 90 minutes right on the marker. What do we got coming up this week? Well, I don't believe there'll be a Sunday show, but there'll definitely be a Thursday show coming next week for This Week in Prepping. Now, Chris Dixon, of course, he's always sending me great suggestions for articles. But if you have something, there's a few things. A couple things I need to mention. Number one, if you have them, send them in Telegram. Come and join. But the big thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, and I need to pound it into everybody's head so we all know, episode 500 is coming up. It's going to be right around the end of January, right around the 5-year anniversary of this channel. And as I mentioned before, this live stream is going to be moving. It's going to be moving from Toolman Tim's workshop to YouTube at Workshop Radio. So the channel is going to be Workshop Radio. If you go to the description, if you're listening audio or watching the video replay, it's the very first link underneath tonight's description. So please, if you haven't, go and add that. If you are a loyal listener to this show, please do me a favor and subscribe to that channel. It's been my super secret alternative YouTube channel for a couple of years, and we're getting close to 500 subscribers. Not a lot, but anybody who watches this show live will move over to that. I'm sure we'll move over to that channel. I hope that you will anyway. But there's been, I'm a firm believer in building a niche. And if you want to be successful in content creation, you have to niche down. And I'm also very particular about running the numbers. And one of the biggest things about the lives is they skew the analytics in a bad way. And so I want this channel here to be the reviews and the how-to videos and everything. And if I want this to go to, you know, in a couple of years, be 100,000 subscribers and have a damn silver play button up behind my head, this is the next move I have to do. I'm all about taking chances and making things better. So we're going to have two separate channels. Toolman Tim's Workshop here, the one you've came to know and love, and the live streams weekly over on Workshop Radio. So there you go, folks. Please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. You know, it is what it is. So I hope you guys have a great week. If you want to catch up on Telegram. I have been slightly away from there recently because I'm just been balls to the wall working on the renos. Cannot wait. We're building the life we want to live. In a couple more weeks, I'll be able to tell you the really exciting news that's happening behind the scenes here at Casa de Cook. And with that, folks, as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.